Good morning. I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche Organization with your daily video update for April 6th, 2023. I'm going to concentrate today on some of the economic and financial news, which shows the irreversible trend toward a new system which is developing, even as the existing dollar system of the rules-based order is collapsing. But we should not take our eyes off the danger in the strategic situation, especially regarding the ongoing NATO war against Russia in Ukraine. Just a quick update on a few developments. There have been warnings coming from Russian officials of the danger of the present situation, including the Deputy Foreign Minister Ryabkov, who called on the adversaries of Russia, that is the US and NATO, to, quote, refrain from any escalation or provocation, unquote. His warning echoes blunt talk coming from people such as former President Medvedev. Also, a statement from Putin spokesman Peskov should be noted. He said that Russia has been forced by changes in the US military doctrine to adopt the policy of preventive warfare, which has been NATO's policy for years. So that puts us closer and closer to the trigger that an accident could lead to a full-scale nuclear war. And in June, there are the NATO Air Defender Exercises 23, which will be the largest NATO air exercises in history. So this has with it a danger of an accident or a miscalculation that could lead to global nuclear war. Meanwhile, the NATO expansion continues, with Finland joining as of yesterday. This now creates a long border in which NATO forces will be right across from Russia, right on the border. So more on these strategic developments, you can go to the link below and look at my weekly dialogue with Helga Zepp-LaRouche, where she took up these issues in significant detail. Now, for the economy, there's a escalating retreat from the collapsing dollar system, running away from the unipolar order toward a new system, which is based on cooperation for mutual development of sovereign nation states. Now, don't be fooled by not hearing in the last day or two of a new bank collapse or of a new multi-billion-dollar bailout. This is continuing. The threat or the danger of an all-out meltdown is continuing. And don't fall for the promises of people like the clueless Janet Yellen, the Treasury Secretary, or Jerome Powell at the Fed, that the system is sound. From those who actually know something, there is a panicked talk of contagion, of system-wide breakdown, and de-dollarization. Let me give you the words of one such knowledgeable figure, Professor Mark Chesney from the University of Zurich, who wrote an article in Swiss Info Journal. Here's what he said. He said, the crisis of Credit Suisse, now that it's been taken over by UBS, is far from being under control. Here are quotes from him. After studying the numbers, the total value of exotic securities like options or future contracts held by the merged bank could be worth 40 times Switzerland's economic output. Over time, UBS, the new monster bank, will control the Swiss state rather than the other way around. For me, the bankruptcy of Credit Suisse is not a singular event, but the bankruptcy of a financial casino system. It is the bankruptcy of politics, which has done nothing, or at least nothing seriously, for 15 years. And it is also the bankruptcy of teaching in the academic field of finance. Chesney continues, I've been publishing opinions in newspapers in Switzerland for a long time to draw attention to the risks associated with Credit Suisse. I'm part of a very small minority. The passivity of the academic world poses a problem. And then he goes back to the main theme of his discussion, and he writes, we are dealing with a casino-like finance system. You have actors who are playing with taxpayer money. One day they win, one day they lose. But at the end of the day, it's the taxpayer who assumes the cost. This time it's Credit Suisse. A couple of weeks ago, it was Silicon Valley Bank in the United States. Now, the problem that he's pointing to Is it within the realm of the academics' approach to economics, or the practice of central bankers? And those central bankers are acting on behalf of the private financial interests which own the central banks. They're left with two options: either printing money to avoid a total collapse of credit, or to constrict circulation of money. Now, they're to fight inflation. So they're caught between inflation on the one side and the domino-style debt collapse, which is caused and has been caused by the flood of money going into the system to cover the absolutely bloated face value of worthless financial instruments. Now, this has been caused by years of deregulation, privatization, outsourcing, deindustrialization. Lyndon LaRouche has a long record of warning that this is exactly the direction that we're headed if we don't go back to principles of physical economics. Well, LaRouche ran for president 8 times. Each time he gave these warnings, and each time people said, oh, LaRouche is a crackpot, he's an extremist, he's exaggerating. But we've been paying the price worldwide for the last 50 years as the system has been going down step by step, cutting out physical production and using the banking system of the central banking system of the major nations to carry out a bailout of worthless speculative assets, bailing out the swindlers while cutting out credit for the productive sector. Now, it's not a surprise then to find that many nations in the former colonial sector, which have experienced this for the last 50 years, are now moving away from the dollar system. And it's not just the dollar system, it's the whole approach to economics. That's why they're looking to China. Not because China is threatening them militarily, but because China represents a successful model of economic development. Cut away from all the ideologically driven babble about China's dictatorship. There are new reports that come out every day that say the people of China are the happiest in the world as their economy is growing, their future is expansive, and we're seeing more and more nations move toward that system. Now, what is that system? That's the old American system where credit is going into physical production to create jobs, to create products, as opposed to the billionaire speculators who are kept alive by the Federal Reserve and the European Central Bank flow of dollars into their hands. We see Brazil now moving to trade with China with the yuan. We see Saudi Arabia accepting the yuan for oil. The latest country to move in this direction is Malaysia, which announced they're looking for a closer relationship with China. The Prime Minister Anwar last week at the Bao summit said that they should consider an Asian monetary fund, which would be to increase credit for development of the real physical economy. And that's the direction of most of the world right now. We're seeing also moves toward a return toward Glass-Steagall banking regulation, away from the deregulation of the Thatcher period of the last 30, 40 years in the United States, and the idea of a return to Glass-Steagall, which is the first of LaRouche's 4 laws, that you need banking separation to make sure that the commercial banking system is not a piggy bank for speculative investment banks, but actually is there to serve the real interests of physical economic production. In Switzerland, a bill is being taken up to consider return to Glass-Steagall. In Italy, even the German financial publication, business publication Handelsblatt, raised the question of, is it time to return to Glass-Steagall? Now, one aspect of this is the report of the U.S. trade deficit, which just came out, which shows that it grew by $100 billion in 2022 over what it was in 2021. And that this represents the largest trade deficit in world history. LaRouche wrote about this trend of what happens when you replace U.S. physical goods production with imports, that is the outsourcing, the deindustrialization. He wrote an article in December 2000 titled The Demise of the Importer of Last Resort. And I have a link for that below in the description section. What he wrote then is now undeniable. Listen to these figures. In 2022, the U.S. had an actual trade surplus in services, that's mostly financial, travel, the service sector, of $244 billion, but a trade deficit on goods, capital goods such as industrial machinery, medical equipment, and so on, a deficit of $1.19 trillion. So this is why it's a matter of national survival for the United States to break out of the present collapsing economic financial paradigm and join with other nations around the world, the nations becoming the global majority, to adopt a new development architecture based on sound principles of physical economy. Every day spent listening to congressmen blathering about reducing the deficit or the transition to the green economy, what we see every single day in the media, we're losing time. At some point, the dam will break loose. The contagion will lead to a systemic debt collapse. And with that, a collapse of the dollar, a collapse of the goods production needed, including food. And at that point, it will be too late. We need to move now preemptively to a new global development architecture. So we have no time to lose. I would urge you to join us on April 15th and 16th, when the Schiller Institute will have the next in its series of conferences to discuss this process. You need to become a part of this, not just passive. Get off your rear end and join our movement now. Hello, thanks for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our videos. Support our independence to produce videos like these. Become a member of the LaRouche organization at thelarouche.org/member. By becoming a member for $25 or more, you'll get special access to the EIR Alert Daily Briefing and Weekly Magazine, which is what I read to stay on top of things.